So what I'm listening to now is I can tell you like what I recently downloaded. The last thing I think I listened to is Jay Electronica's new albums. He dropped all those albums. Let's see what else I just recorded. Um, oh, Dear Silas, dude, a rapper, kind of singer, a melodic rap out of Mississippi. He's dope. Got a new album called, well, it's from last year called Cadillac Leather in July, which, if you are not from the South, you don't know Cadillac Leather in July means this shit is hot. Like it'll burn you. It's so hot. Um, she's got a new single called A Color Show. Real cool dude. Jay Electronica, Deontay Hitchcock, a dude out of Atlanta, a rapper out of Atlanta. If you go on YouTube, check out his freestyles. He has these like 10-minute long freestyles that I still contend um, that Black Thought did because he was doing them. But he is also Deontay Hitchcock, Deante Hitchcock, is also the dude that wrote all of the raps for what's the show? The show about the strip club in Mississippi, P Valley. So he is actually the writer behind Low Murder, if you know what I'm talking about, or if you watch P Valley. So that's some of the stuff I listen to. But then, Black Thought, Streams of Thoughts, and then there's stuff like, if you can see this, like Aretha Franklin, um, which about once a month I listen to Ain't No Way like 100 times in a row about once a month. Um, so it's old school, Raekwon. Uh, so that's my listening habits. Somebody else asked me. I got an email asking me, and I get this email a lot about like, is there a book I can read after they finish Black AF history? And I know like Black AF history comes to an end, and then there's like acknowledgement, but there's actually a part of the book after the end that gives you kind of like a reading list and where you can find books and historical research resources. And it's always hard for me to like tell people a list because I don't think like there's a book or like 5 books you can read and get a comprehensive history. That's why we actually do this, right? Because it's kind of like my mom always had us taught us like, a learning is a lifelong journey, and it's a process where you like educate yourself every day. So a lot of the stuff that like I'll be here and I'll be like, and I'll see the name of a book and I'll be like, do I have that book or not? Because I can't remember if I read it. There'll be information I would have read, and I don't know what book I read it in. Or like there are books in my house that I have like 4 copies of because I didn't remember if I bought it or not. And the problem is sometimes like if I'm writing or doing some research and I know that there's a book that I don't have that has the information that I need in it, the easiest thing for me to do is to get it on Kindle, and so I'll get it on Kindle to look up the information have, and I'll assume just in my head, oh yeah, now I have that book, but like that does me no good because I don't read books on Kindle. I can look up stuff on Kindle. So, but there is a book called, and like if you grew up in a Black household in the '80s, you might have had this book, The Black Book. It's paperback. And I think you can get like reissued copies. It was uh out of print and then went back into print. Um, and the interesting thing about the Black Book is that this was when hold on, and I'm going to look it up, but I'm pretty sure it was not Alice Walker, Toni Morrison. Like I didn't even have to look it up; it just came to me. See, my brain is slow, but So Toni Morrison, when she was like working at a publishing house, she was always interested in history. And there was this dude named Middleton who was like this historical collector. And she wanted to get more black books published, but she got it self-financed. So like Bill Cosby and all these black stars financed this book. And they went to all of these black historians and black collectors, and they got the actual documents. So the black book is not like this is a thing that happened. It is like, hey, you want to read this document from like 1862, written by this enslaved man. So check out the Black Book. It's got pictures, and it's not just a like a history book. It's more like a one issue of a historical magazine. It's usually in paperback, but you can I have hardback copies too. And it's pictures, it's like little articles, like almost like a Wikipedia of blackness is a good way to describe it. The Black Book. And I still thumb through the Black Book every now and then. But then there's like you just get books from unusual sources. Whenever I go to a museum, like there's a book called James Island Descendants, and there's actually two versions, right? So one you can order on Amazon, but I got mine from a museum in Charleston, and it's what this dude did. I think he was like a sheriff's deputy, and he went around collecting like stories from people who were either enslaved or their parents or their grandparents were enslaved. So he was young, a kid, man, and he got like a tape recorder for his birthday, and he went around and collected all of these. And then when he got older, he transferred them into text and just compiled all the interviews into a book. That's the one you can get on Amazon. But if you get the one from the museum, or I don't know where else they sell it, like he actually traces the lineage of like almost every old black family on James Island and Monk's Corner and in that area, Mount Pleasant, and traces it back to which plantation they own. So it's like literally separated by, okay, these are the people who lived on the Magnolia plantation. And there's a chapter in my book, and a lot of that came from James Island descendants. Just you could and that's the thing about storytelling, right? You can take like literal information and you can just transfer it into a story. Because like people don't want to read statistics, but you if you make it into a story, that's interesting, right? Like I think I wrote about this in on Contraband Camp, but I know it's in my upcoming book, right? So I was tracing the lineage of my family and on my father's side. So and I went back and I found this guy, like my great 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 grandfather, Adam Fields. And all I had was his records from the US colored troops and census documents that showed where he was enslaved. But from that, you could tell a couple of things. Like you could say, okay, Adam Fields was enslaved on this plantation owned by this man named Hayward in 1850. And then by 1860, he was still there. But there really wasn't a South Carolina census in 1860. But then he shows up on the U.S. colored troops roll. And now you look up the U.S. colored troops and oh, they started on this day, but they were actually part of a militia first. And they were mustered out of this place. And then they became the part of the U.S. colored troops. So we see, okay, if Adam Fields was here on this day, and then he became a part of the U.S. colored troops, then that means one, you can see which regiment he was in. One, he was in the regiment with Harriet Tubman. You know which regiment Harriet Tubman was attached to. So Adam Fields met Harriet Tubman. Then, you go through more documents and you find out, oh, when the Emancipation Proclamation was first read to the U.S. colored troops, all of them were gathered at a contraband camp. So Adam Fields was there. And then you see this one lady's name and you look her up and you realize she was this black woman who had escaped slavery, but she could read, and so she taught all the U.S. colored troops how to read. And she wrote her autobiography, and then you pick up her autobiography and you realize she has a list of everybody she ever taught how to read. And you see Aaron Fields in there. Now, oh, that's not my great great grandfather. His name was Adam. But then you go back to those U.S. colored troops roll and you see there was no Adam, Aaron Fields. She misspelled Adam Fields, right? And so you can tell his story through these historical documents. And that's how I trace my family all the way back to this great 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 grandfather who was running around with Harriet Tubman. And because I know where he was in 1850, you can pull old newspapers and say, oh, this dude's unit with the U.S. colored troops, which he was there because like they took attendance once a month. He was there. He went back to the plantation where he was enslaved and burned that shit down. So that's the story. And then you realize who else was in the unit with them, and they were collecting this fund to buy property. Then you go to the 1870 census, and you see Adam Fields owned property on the plantation where he was enslaved. He came back and bought some of that land. So that storytelling is not from, hey, I read this book about my great great grandfather. It's from all of these disparate sources that you put together to tell a story. And so it's hard to just like give a list of one thing that somebody can read. But I do recommend the Black Book just to keep it in your house. My book, of course. Uh, and it's always good to have the souls of Black folk and anything W.E.B. Du Bois has written. Although there is no one book which is crazy to me. Um, that has everything Du Bois ever wrote. I am, let's keep it quiet, but I am in talks with a company to start an imprint, a publishing imprint. And one of the things I want to do is like, besides find new authors, is to go back and get all of those books and documents that are like the copyright has lapsed and put all of those Black documents in a book, not me talking about them or anything, but like, this is everything W.E.B. Du Bois wrote. This is everything we could find on Ida B. Wells. This is, or if you want to read just like there's series of the great philosophers and you have Socrates and Plato. Um, I want to do like a book with Martin Delaney's writings and the David Walker's appeal to the colored people of the world. All of that, all of those things um, in a book. And so that may be coming. But I think when it comes to reading, first of all, I don't know if like people say, well, people don't read anymore. And it might be privileged to sound so, but like say so, but like people buying my book, it might be that people aren't publishing what people want to read anymore. Um, and that might be the thing because one of the things, if you ask any Black writer, any Black director, any black filmmaker, they'll say, "Oh yeah, these like if I'm with CBS or if I'm with like a big publisher, they don't know how to sell my stuff. Like they literally don't know how to reach Black people." Like when I did Tricktomaniacs, that was with Sony, and they didn't know how to sell it. Right? Like the ideas were insane that they would have. They wanted to put an ad in Essence magazine. That's it. That was their whole idea. Let's buy an ad in Essence magazine. Like, people be on, like, you can listen to this on the internet, and you can put it somewhere like people can actually just push a button. So most of the stuff that you see with black writers, black people who kind of own their content, or even if they're with like a big company like, Netflix or CBS, most of that promotion you see is them reaching out to people they know. Like my book, still on the bestseller list. Um, One of the best. It's been one of the best selling. It came out in 2023. It was one of the best selling books of 2023, 2024, and it'll be one of the ones this year. And we didn't go on a single television show except for Joy Reid's show. Right? Everything every other piece of press we got is something I reached out to somebody I knew who knew somebody I knew. And like I got on the Breakfast Club because I knew, I had a connection with Charlemagne, and I got on. Um, I did Van Lathan's podcast, but they really don't know how to reach us. And so, what's going to happen, especially in this era that we're in, where they're not making any black shows, they're not making Hollywood is not making black movies. They just like you realize that all that stuff that they did after George Floyd was performative because they stopped doing it once. It's not that Trump made, this is the misconception. Trump did not make them stop being diverse and equitable and inclusive. He gave them permission to stop. They didn't want to do it anyway, right? When you think about it, right? The George Floyd protests all over this country, we went in the streets. And these companies had certain responses. Some of them put in DEI programs, right? And the idea that these companies didn't know that these corporations that they were in charge of, that they know intimately, had no idea that they were racist and exclusive until like black people were in the streets protesting police brutality is an absurd idea. That's a crazy idea. So what they did is they saw the bellwether and they complied in advance, right? And once Trump pushed those executive orders, and once they saw the blowback against DEI, they didn't do in the programs out of fear. They never wanted to do it, right? And it's not like they didn't want to do it because it was racist, but it requires a little bit more of an effort than just hiring these white people I know, right? Because what the problem is not like there's a boardroom with people smoking cigars saying, "Ooh, we're gonna keep out the blacks." No, it's just like you hire people who look like you, who you know their aunt and uncle, and the aunt and uncle calls the CEO or the head of HR and say, "Hey, can my son get an interview?" And he went to the right school, and the school that he went to, and all of that kind of circular inside information is how we get these disparities now. Here is the thing: what we call the right school, what is because those schools excluded black people historically. What we call, if you lived next door and it was your next door neighbor, it's because you lived in a segregated neighborhood. So black people were excluded historically, right? And then the system that was built, segregation, redlining, um, Jim Crow, excluding black people from schools, all of that, right, created a system where you don't have to be racist. Like it perpetuates itself. Like you don't have to stand at the schoolhouse door and keep black people out of your college if, for instance, The first black students you have came in 1964. Here's an example that I use, right? So my mom is probably one of the smartest women I've ever met in my life. My mom, her birthday was last week, matter of fact. My mom went to a private boarding school called Mather. Like another famous graduate, like while she was there, is Jim Clyburn. And that boarding school was created by black folks like in the 1800s. Anyway, and there's a few of them like that. Felicia Rashad and Debbie Allen's mom taught at one. But anyway, she went to that school and she graduated from that school. But the rest of my family graduated from the schools in my hometown, Butler High School. That high school closed in 1988. But like in the 1960s, that school system was still segregated. In the 1970s, it was still segregated. My Darlington County schools, you can look this up, desegregated fully in 1992, right? But let's go back to my mom and my aunts and my uncles. So they had never, ever gone to school with white people. I am the first generation, me, my sisters, and my cousins are the first generations of our family to go to school with white people. Not only were they the first generation, were we the first generations of uh, our family to go to school with white people, but in South Carolina, people my age, think about this now. People my age were the first generation of people in the entire history of the state to have parents who were college graduates. South Carolina didn't stop segregating its colleges until the 60s. There was one college, South Carolina State, that was publicly funded. That was federally funded. So there was no state funded school until like the 70s. Black school, HBCU, again, that black people could attend. So all of these white kids in South Carolina had parents and grandparents who had taken the SATs, who had attended college, who knew like what you needed to do to get into a good college. We had one generation, if that, of parents who could even guide us through when you're in the 11th grade. Hey, you know you need to take the PSAT versus, or if you want to get scholarships like this, SAT gets you into college, but the PSAT is what gets you the scholarships. It's what gets you paid. We had one generation of that, if that, and it was sparse. Like I was lucky to come from a family who had college graduates, but most of the people my age, it was not that like they weren't smart enough. They just didn't like they could not attend a college until the 60s, right? So when you think about the disparity that that creates, right? Because like the best predictor of how you do in the SAT or whether you do go to college or how you do in college is if your parents went to college, right? So when we talk about those disparities on the SAT, a lot of them aren't because you went to like a segregated black school. It's because like socioeconomic disparities manifest themselves in standardized tests. And when you graduate from college, if you graduate, because again, the predictor of how if you'll graduate is if your parents graduated. So a lot of people can get into college, but to be able to navigate that kind of institution, to know what to do when you get there, you're helped if your parents or your grandparents or somebody in your family went. So that college graduation disparity manifests itself. And then when Target, let's say, is looking for employees, they say, well, we just couldn't find no qualified candidates, right? And it's not because Target don't care or wants to keep black people out. they're just like the location in South Carolina is just subject to the historical inequalities that manifested themselves in the people who filled out applications to work in the corporate part of Target. So, what the only way to erase that is to put forth a little effort because like it's not like these people are dumber or they couldn't n- get into college. It's that those historical instances, those historical things manifested themselves. So when these corporations had to put forth an effort, decided to put forth an effort because they saw all those black people in the streets, they were doing the right thing, but they didn't want to. They had to put, it makes you put forth a little effort, right? Like if you had to, if the mailman delivered your mail on your front porch, you'd get it as soon as he delivered it. If he delivered it to the mailbox out in the street, you just wait until you went outside. You might check your mailbox when you left home or when you were coming home, right? And once because you put forth less effort, you probably be like, man, you know what? My mailman ain't qualified to be a mailman because he don't even come up to my doorstep. Right. And that's the thing, that's that disparity, right? So mailmen who are willing to walk up to your doorstep are more likely to get hired. And so when we talk about like the systemic racism, this is the thing that we're talking about. When people say there is no systemic racism, what they're dismissing is like it's always funny to me because like you think when you eliminated Jim Crow, it stopped, like it wasn't going to manifest itself. You think when you signed the Civil Rights Act, and we did it, nah, these things still manifest itself. And America never wanted to fix it. They just saw all of those people out there at the March on Washington. They just saw all of those people out there in Selma. And they said, hey, we'll sign the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. And then they did nothing. They didn't fix the schools. Again, 1992 is when my hometown fully desegregated. So those are the things that we're talking about when we're talking about like inequality, when we're talking about race, when we're talking about white supremacy. Not like people like to narrow it down and flatten it to white people evil. It's not that. That's not what we're saying. But you have to ask yourself, if you know all of this stuff existed, slavery, Jim Crow, discrimination, and how hard black people fought to battle them and to end them, and you decide to do nothing or you decide to let the effects linger just by doing nothing, just by like, I don't care if he can't get to his street to get his mail. If he can't get it from the street, he just won't get his mail. Are you evil if you don't care? That's the question that we got to think about, right? Are you evil if you don't care? If you do nothing? I I I don't know the answer to that because like I was like I am slowly beginning to realize like some of the things that I take for granted is just values that were instilled in me, and not everyone has those values. Like if somebody like I grew up, we didn't have no money. Like I grew up, I mean, poor, not poor like but we didn't have any money. But if my mom saw somebody else need, she was gonna give some of ours. My sister who's on this call is the same way. Like I imagine I know, like, her husband be so mad at her because she take people in. She ain't poor, but, like, it is the values, I can't shake them. And a lot of things that I think is, like, a common humanity, I assume was a common humanity, was just values that were instilled in me. Like, if you need it, bruh, and I got it, I might be hungry, but I'm not gonna starve if I give you some of mine. If I have some and you might starve, like, well, let's be both of us be a little bit hungrier, right? What's the use of me being full, having to see people being hungry? And I thought that was a human thing. I'm seeing now it definitely ain't a Christian thing because we see what these so-called evangelicals are doing across America. But I'm realizing it ain't even an American thing. Like, we're not just cruel. We we would rather see other people suffer than do something, which is crazy to me. But I'm beginning to realize, like, how common that sentiment is. And the thing that I fear is that Black people are beginning to adopt those ideals, like, to value, like, ooh, so and so is a billionaire. You see how much money so and so has? And I know we all like money. We live in a capitalist system. But there is a sociopathy that comes with that capitalism requires, right? It requires stepping on somebody's neck, right? Because I was talking about Jay-Z the other day, right? And, the thing that he said about Colin Kaepernick, whether you agree with it or disagree with when he said, like, the time for kneeling is over. And somebody said, well, he was trying to get an NFL team at that time. And, you got to understand that Jay-Z runs in the billionaires class. Now, one of the misconceptions is that you have to be a capitalist to be rich. No, you don't. I think people should get what they deserve for what they're talented enough to receive what they work for. And the thing I wonder is Jay-Z could have been richer than all of us. Just being the best rapper who ever lived. Like, you don't have to get in a room with them white folks and plot against Colin Kaepernick. You can just be the greatest rapper who ever lived and you'll be rich enough. Like, 100 million ain't rich enough? Being the greatest rapper who ever lived? And the next stepping part is the capitalist part, not the rich part, right? Because some people get rich. Like, Bill Gates deserves to be rich for creating Windows 95, right? You don't have to step on anybody's neck to reap the benefits of what you did to create a business or to capitalize on your talent. But the next stepping part, the willingness to, one, like, hoard that money. I mean, and I again, I realize this is a product of installed morals. To have that much money, it's crazy to me. Not to get that much money, because again, if you're the richest rapper in the world, you can get it. To have $200 million and not, like, you could give your children generational wealth, but I think I would feel like there was some of this that was the reason I had all of this was for me to give it to some people. That's the reason to me, for me to, like, If I was going to sit in a room with a bunch of white dudes, if I was going to smoke cigars, if I was going to, you know, sell liquor, sell somebody else's liquor, the goal would be that money, mhm, like to put forth the effort to enrich somebody else and myself. I must be doing this to help some more people, right? Um, but again, I'm realizing that's not a product of somebody being good. That's not a product of somebody being human. It's just the values that your parents gave you and instilled in you. Now, here's the thing. Let's expand that out further. Those are American values. That's the property, the values and ideas that we have instill in Americans, right? And I wrote about it a couple of weeks ago, but one of the misconceptions is that America is a capitalist country. No, America is a next stepping country. Capitalism, like when we talk about slavery and connecting it to capitalism, it really wasn't a because so let me put on my professor hat now, my economics professor hat. Y'all give me a second. So when people talk about capitalism, what they're talking about is a purely free market. That's what they're essentially talking about. So everything you buy is determined by supply and demand and a few other determining factors, but those are the main ones, right? So if you sell widgets, if everybody else is selling widgets, the price is low. If there's a bunch of widgets on the market, the price is low. If you have an exclusive deal with the widget manufacturers, or if you're the only widget manufacturer, then you can sell them for whatever you want to. That's capitalism. And you can do whatever you want to. And you can only be regulated because people need widgets. You can only be regulated by the market, right? Like the government can't regulate your price because you run the market. That's a free market. That's capitalism. And because it's a free market, capitalists can do what they want. And they say, if they step over the bound, if they step out of line, the market will regulate them. If they start selling bad widgets and people start dying from widgets, and people stop buying widgets. And so they'll go out of business. And if they, broke the law, people will get mad and stop. So the market regulates. That's a pure capitalist. Now let's think about slavery. Slavery, black people were widgets in this system of race-based slavery that America created. And it wasn't like other countries, right? But in America, it wasn't capitalist because the government backed it. If in the Constitution of America, they said they didn't do it for your cotton. If you had a bad cotton crop, you just didn't know how to grow cotton. That's capitalism. But if you had a ship and the ship sank, the government can't do anything about that. But if you had slaves and your slaves ran away, if your slaves escaped, the government said it's your duty as an American. We're going to write it in the Constitution, the Fugitive Slave Clause, that this government guarantees the return of your human property, your labor. That's not capitalism. That's the thing that they keep talking about. So they tell you about socialism. You notice that like if one of those people call you a socialist or a capitalist, or a communist, they can never define it because they don't know the principles of economics. But that's socialism. This entire country, all of us, every American, is a backer of your human property. Only black people don't. This country, every citizen backs the oppression of Black Americans. That was the system of slavery. Not only did they back it financially, right? They taxed it less. They didn't tax it the same as any other property. They said it was property, but they didn't tax it the same way. And not only did they put it in the Constitution, they created a federal force that'll chase it down for you. We're protecting it, we're ensuring it, and we're ensuring its return. Now, not only did they ensure its return, but remember the War of 1812. I mean, people forget that the War of 1812, like, they were attacking, was about pirates attacking slave ships. The United States Army, you can attack, like, these private industry of human trafficking was protected by the United States military. That's not capitalism. Capitalism is saying, can't keep your ship safe. That's just the market regulating itself, right? That's a purely capitalist. Socialism is saying all of the people in this country are going to pay 2 cents on every dollar, or a penny on every dollar, or 6 pence on every dollar. And that's going to go to our military. And that military is going to protect this constitutionally enshrined system of oppression. That's socialism. That's not capitalism. And so the ideas that we have about slavery and many other things that we talk about, right? If a corporate, you talk about, these people who want to tax the rich, the socialists. Now, just think about this. If the Supreme Court says corporations are people, and corporations are taxed at a different rate than people, then we live in a socialist country. If we're giving the corporations the American people's money and allowing them to not exist in capitalism, not exist as a person, we're regulating how much corporations have to pay taxes. And then a lot of them don't pay tax, right? Like we lose an estimate of about $275 billion every year by corporations who just don't pay taxes. They just don't. Not figure out loopholes. No, they just don't pay them. That's not capitalism. And the critiques of capitalism, like, again, someone like Bill Gates, who just became a billionaire because he invented a thing, like, of course he did probably some underhanded billionaire shit. But the reason he has his money is not capitalism, right? The reason he had his money is because he invented a thing and made money from it. That is different from someone like, let's take Elon Musk, who invented nothing, right? He didn't invent anything. He invested in Tesla, used the government protected stock system to oust the founders, right? That ain't capitalism. And got government contracts for until 2023. Tesla did not make money selling cars. They never made a profit selling cars. Most of the profits still don't come from selling cars. It's from selling carbon credits. So just a quick explanation, like, so to cut down on, like, us burning down the earth, or, carbon emissions, if you know, uh, exude so much carbon, you have to, if you're a corporation, you have to pay. But if you're a corporation that exudes less carbon or produces a product that, has a negative effect, right? Then you essentially are producing carbon credits. So because Tesla manufactured electric cars, they got carbon credits. and they would sell those to corporations who polluted the earth for a profit. So they weren't Tesla was not selling cars. They were But because they made electric cars, they could sell this government product. Like this was a government law. This government product, socialism again, that we finance, people, me, you taxpayers, finance this whole carbon tax credit idea. We financed it so that corporations, the idea was for corporations to not pollute the air that we breathe. Tesla figured out a loophole that they can sell the money that we gave them credit for to the people who are poisoning our air and make a profit. That's why Elon Musk is a billionaire, not because of capitalism. It is because he takes our money and sells it to people who take our money. That's the socialism that they talk about. And then when they throw around all of these words, right? Socialism, right? That's they're just using these weaponized words that they don't know what it means. So socialism is, in its purest sense, is not terrible, right? So in a socialist country, there are certain things that the government produces and owns, right? Like it's a little bit, it's like almost like communism, like. And we've always lived in a socialist country. We love socialism, right? I know people here who think they're capitalists. Yeah, you like socialism. If you don't like socialism, would you like to live in a neighborhood that didn't have a fire department? That's socialism. A library? That's socialism. A school board, a park, a school. That's socialism. If it wasn't a socialist country, if we didn't agree to live in a community or a country with principles of individual principles of each, a little bit of capitalism, a little bit of socialism. When there was a pothole on your street, you and your neighbors would have to get together and raise some money and hire a paving company to fix it. But because that is a social or a societal responsibility, we don't have to. That's why you got a mailman walking to your box and bringing you mail. Because we agree that a combination of capitalism and socialism is good. And sometimes we have these extreme debates on Twitter where, like, somebody screams at each other, "Are you a capitalist? Or is social? Oh, you're a communist," not knowing what they're talking about. And we can't talk about these issues with nuance, which is the reason Contraband Camp exists. But we don't also teach children the principles of socialism, communism, and capitalism. When I was in high school, my economics class, we had a thing where each class raised money and competed against each other. We sold T-shirts. That's capitalism. But we don't learn anything else, right? We don't learn what communism is. So when your daddy is and your granddaddy is MAGA and they call somebody a communist for, you know, um, protesting something, like for supporting Black Lives Matter, or they equate somebody like Zoran Mamdani, a democratic socialist, they equate that with communists. We don't know how to counter that. We just accept it. Oh, socialism. I always heard that shit was bad, right? Until we figure out that it's not that bad. Like we thought, you remember when healthcare, like universal healthcare or government subsidized healthcare, was socialism until 2010, and then we passed Obamacare, and then became everybody kind of agreed that it was a little bit good, right? Like, because remember what the threat was. There's going to be death panels that going to decide when you die, and doctors were going to not be cared about curing disease, and then we cured COVID. Like that's what the danger they told us of socialized medicine was, right? Like there wouldn't be the incentive of capitalism to cure diseases, to make medical advances, and then that pandemic hit, and we like it's all bullshit. But because we don't have those values instilled in us, because we don't learn what these things mean, we have to assume that these people know what they're talking about. But we really don't, right? We don't have to. We can still learn. It's not too late to learn, to educate ourselves, to teach ourselves, and it ain't too late to care about each other. That's the That's the danger of critical race theory, that they fear why everything is critical race theory. That's the danger of DEI. Like, whatever you start working with these black people and you realize, hey, this system, like, why did I get into Harvard and this person that worked next to me is just as smart? Like, maybe this system is kind of rigged, or maybe like all these people I demonized aren't as bad as I thought they were, or the flaws that I thought they were. Because, and we're having, and the last thing I'll say, because we're going to get off in a second, is that we got a piece coming out today about this very idea, about how all of the things that we demonize black people for ain't that bad anymore. Because since this happening to white people, remember when we're getting on welfare was bad, and then now all of these people are like, yeah, we need to help the welfare recipients or the SNAP recipients, because it's SNAP now. Everybody knows SNAP. They were just calling it welfare. When did you first start hearing the term SNAP? Because it was always SNAP. But when did you start hearing that term? When people started realizing that white people get it. It started being SNAP then, not welfare. Like ain't no welfare, ain't no SNAP queens. Now that we know white people get it. Or think about this, right? Um, like, what's the difference between, like, you see how upset even people on both sides are about these ICE raids? Where do you think they learned that from? What do you think those ICE officers come from? What do you think they get those tactics from? What do you think they get the idea that they can do this without any accountability from? They did this shit to black people every day. That's where the idea comes from. And so we're seeing the same thing with opioids, right? Like, if when it was crack and it was demonized as a black people drug, even though if you look through the SAMHSA, the drug survey every year that the government does, it was never black people. Like, it was always um, white people who were using crack. If you look at, like, one day we're going to be comfortable enough. I'm going to be comfortable enough to explain the economics of drug dealing, because it is a perfect encapsulation of the American economy. Because first of all, it's government subsidized, right? Like, ain't no black dudes from the hood bringing no kilos of cocaine in here. Like, the only way you can get here is for it to be come through a government protected system. But the other thing that we forget about is, if you lived in the 90s and the 2000s, all of that money that drug dealers were making, when we talk about that, and this is what my friends told me, hey man, it wasn't that much money in poor black neighborhoods. Like, that money that they were getting, was not from, first of all, from not black people and not from poor people and not from people who we demonized as crackheads. Like, it was from the most prevalent crack users when you look at the statistics, or read Dr. Carl Hart's book, was like white working class people. And if you go look at it, SAMHSA today doesn't delineate between crack and cocaine, but it's all the same thing, right? If you look at the statistics on who uses cocaine, you'll see it even today. Um, Look, we've been talking for an hour. I hadn't answered a single question, but I'm glad y'all joined me. Again, we're going to be here every Friday live. You still get your regular wake up call 3 times a week. Um, and don't forget to subscribe to Contraband Camp. Don't forget to, you know, stay in touch like we're a community. Like, comment, respond to other people's comments, and let's share these values that we're learning from each other together, man. Because once this country crumbles and once this system crumbles and once we dismantle it, it's going to be up to us to decide what's next. And we're creating that model now. So we'll see you later in camp.